Welcome to Fabulous Women Over 40, hosted by celebrity stylist Kara Allan. Join Kara as she interviews amazing women, sometimes younger and amazing men as well, in their 40s and beyond. Here's Kara with our Fabulous Woman of the Day.
Welcome back to Fabulous Women Over 40. I'm your host, Kara Allan, and today I'm so excited for my guest, Melody Godfred. Melody, how are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm so happy to be here with you.
I'm so excited and happy that you're here. And I must say, I would love for you to intro yourself because I don't think I could do you justice, honestly.
You're being very kind, but I will try to give the short version. I'm Melody Godfred. I'm an author, a poet, and an entrepreneur. And I've devoted the last, 7 years of my life to exploring self-love and empowering women to choose themselves and change their lives.
I love that. That is so perfect. So I wanted to just kind of dive in today to how you came about being the self-love goddess, as I like to call you, because truly you are that. So I wanted to kind of start at the beginning. So tell me about your upbringing and your family, and where did you grow up, and how was your childhood?
Of course. Well, I'll start at the very beginning. I was born in Tehran, Iran, shortly after the Iranian Revolution. And when I was only a few months old, my parents fled the country with me so that I could live a life as a free woman. And we landed after some, very difficult nights in the middle of the desert and in Pakistan and then to Israel. And then finally here, we finally landed in Los Angeles. And this is where I grew up and where I still currently reside. My childhood had a real duality to it. On one hand, my parents were so committed to giving me every opportunity because that is why they came here. And despite having nothing, I seemingly had everything.
Right.
And so I had a very beautiful childhood, and it was a period of growth and learning, I think, for all of us as we acclimated to this new place. And at the same time, it was also a period where early on I learned that it was my responsibility to survive. And in order to do that, I really gravitated towards this culture of achievement and productivity and defining myself through my ambition and my accomplishments. And that's really what my childhood kind of featured, was me being this very soulful, creative, sensitive girl who felt like in order to have value in this world, I needed to be the smartest, the best, the most talented, the most accomplished, and all within like a very loving and supportive family environment, which I'm so grateful for. But I think for a lot of people who come here as immigrants, it's just this kind of do or die environment where you really do feel that thirst for survival on a daily basis.
Wow, that's really cool that your parents were very supportive at that early of an age, honestly. What a gift.
I was singing and writing music when I was 4 years old, and my mom at the time was only 25, so she was a baby herself and in a new country with no friends or family. And somehow looking back, she managed to get me into like the most prestigious music schools and voice lessons, and I actually sang on the Sherry Lewis and Lamb Chop CD. Like, I'm dating myself.
That's so cool.
Because you have to be 40 or over to understand what that is.
Lamb chop, yes.
Right? And I think back now that I'm a mother with 3 kids, and I see how incredibly hard it is, even with all the resources that I have and all the support and education. How did they do that? How did my mom nurture the creativity in me when no one was around to help her do it? So I'm really grateful for my parents and for everything that they instilled in me, because that's really what led me to the work I'm doing now, were those early seeds they planted when I was a child.
Well, it sounded like both your parents, but especially your mom had had a lot of fortitude. Like she was a
Mhm.
strong internal person, I would say, because we look at people and say, "Oh, you're so strong, you can do." Well, I think it's more about fortitude, in the sense that you can be strong because you have to, but the fortitude that comes from being strong. I mean, I can't even imagine what their environment was like in Iran, and then coming here, and it's sort of a do or die thing here too. I mean, obviously, it's not the same environment
Mhm.
every day, of like live or die per se, like that. But it's
Yeah,
still like you got to figure it out because nobody's coming, nobody's coming to save you. So,
exactly. And
yeah,
she does have that fortitude is such a good word to describe her inner engine of like who she is. And, there's the expression, if there's a will, there's a way. I always like to say, if there's a woman, there's a way.
I
You had
love
taught
that.
me, right? That to be a woman is to find the way and to do it
Hmm.
with grace, and without drawing attention and without asking for a pat on the back. You just do it. And the
Yeah.
older I get, the more I realize that um, I really can do it. And all I need to do is make sure that I am loving myself and caring for myself in the process so that I
Hmm.
don't burn out. Because that's how I found self-love. It was through burnout. It was
Mm,
after several years of trying to be everything to everyone and to do
right.
everything and to have it all. And
Hmm.
I got it all and wasn't happy. And I thought to myself, this is so sad. You work your whole life to get to this place of security, of accomplishment, of having your family and your work. And you get there and you realize that, oh my God, somehow I left myself behind. And
Yeah.
for me, this period of my life leading up to 40 has been all about how do I rediscover who I am, my authentic self, and how do I bring her to the table so that I
Hmm.
can actually enjoy the life that I have?
Right. Because if you don't enjoy it, what was the point?
Yeah.
It was all for nothing, It's
Yeah.
just, I don't, yeah. And I always find it an interesting thing when people say, well, how do you do it? And I'm like, okay, why are they asking me that? Is it because they want to know honestly how I did it? Or are they just like, because you just do it. There's no, if you have to go on, you can't just sit there again because nobody's coming to save you.
Yeah.
You just have to do it. But I mean, everybody's fortitude is different, let's just say, or lack of it.
You bring up a really good point because I'm always really sensitive to people being like, oh, you're superwoman. How do you do it? And I'm just like, no, we
Yeah.
are all living our own lives and we all have the things we have to get through in order to make it work. And
Hmm.
when I go to sleep at night, I don't go to sleep thinking I'm super. I just go to sleep thinking I did my best today and that's all I can do. And I
Right.
try to relieve that pressure of perfection, of needing every day to be like a 10 out of 10. I checked
Hmm.
everything off my list kind of day. And instead, like, go to sleep feeling like I lived a little today. And I wasn't
Yeah.
just running through my list. I breathed, I smiled, I moved, I
Hmm.
expressed myself, I connected. That's
Right.
kind of my barometer for a good day.
You enjoyed the day
Mhm.
because, again, people say, "Oh, how are you today?" I said, "Any day I'm not taking a dirt nap is a good day.
Yes.
Not pushing up daisies, I got all the basics that I need, and everything else is just whatever it's going to be."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
because a lot of it is out of our control at this point. So we just choose to have a good day.
Yeah, I think choice is like a really foundational part of self-love for me. And frankly,
Hmm.
it's a really foundational part of all love.
Right.
Um, when I got married, my dad gave me who is very sage-like and wise and my best friend. He just kind of pulled me aside and was like, listen, marriage is a choice you make every day. That's all it
Mm-hmm.
is. You just get up and you choose this person, this life, this relationship. He's like, and if you don't choose it for one day, believe me, it's a slippery slope. Like it will
Yeah.
get away from you. And that was really good advice. And I only wish that when he gave me that advice, almost 12 years ago now, I had also realized that the advice he was giving me was also relevant to my relationship with myself. Because we also have to choose ourselves every day.
Yes.
We also need to show up for ourselves every day. And when I first, started my life as an adult, I really didn't choose myself at all. I chose other people. I chose perfection. I chose trying to do what I thought I was supposed to do instead of what I really wanted to do.
Right.
And all it got me was like a lot of resentment, a lot of disappointment, and a lot of just feeling not fully alive.
Yeah.
And that's really why I write the poetry that I write. It's why I created my self-love movement and the self-love pinky ring. It's all about how can we create reminders in our lives that we deserve to be chosen, and not just by the world and others, but by ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. That's a pivotal thing that I'm kind of dealing with in my own life. And my mother always, there's a verse, I can never reread it exactly like it. I mean, remember exactly like it is. So I'll just pull it up. But I remember her saying this when I was young. She would always say, God says choose, right? Like, I mean, that was in the very beginning. We know what happened with Adam and Eve, but later on in some other verses, it's in Deuteronomy 30:19. It says, I call heaven and earth to witness against you today. I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore, choose life that you and your seed may live. So to me, like every day we get to choose. Am I living today or am I dying? Am I complaining about what I don't have? Am I, mad about something that happened 2 days ago? Like one of the other good things I heard was yesterday ended last night. So we have to learn how to let things go, because that's what keeps us healthy, what keeps us happy, which keeps us, moving forward and living in the present and not in the past, and not too far in the future either. Because if you're not enjoying where you're at, all of it's a journey, or we're so busy trying to do, have, be, then you're not even present to what's going on in the moment, and things just sort of pass you by.
Well, I wrote this in self-love poetry. I wrote this poem. It says, the only way to get where you're going is to be where you are.
Yes.
This idea that like if you're not present, it will all pass you by.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll never get the satisfaction that you're craving so desperately. The
So
satisfaction lives only in the present moment. And it's amazing how these truths, like the one you just read from the Bible, like these are ancient truths. They're not new. And I do believe that on like a cellular level, it's embedded in us to live and to be present and to be grateful. And unfortunately, like our culture is so kind of dotted with distraction and all these emotions that take you away from yourself, that it's really hard to just get to the essence of who we are. I mean, the other night, I was putting my 4-year-old son to sleep, and in his like half awake, half asleep space, he says to me, Mom, we have to forgive ourselves because that's how we get unstuck.
Oh my God. Where did he get that from? Little old soul there.
Thing, like, what if we are all old souls? What if universal wisdom is actually within us, and all we have to do is strip away all the distractions?
Yeah, that's so true. And I feel like where we're at in life, there's a shift happening in the consciousness, honestly. And I feel like we're getting to the point where we're understanding that we are being, not that we're transforming into something that we weren't, but that what we always were all along is being revealed. Like all the crap is being stripped away of, oh, I gotta have this degree, or I gotta have this kind of house, because that makes me successful, or that makes me a great whatever. And you can work and still and get all those things, and then you're still unfulfilled because you didn't really understand that you were a whole person to begin with. You didn't need any of that stuff. They're fun to have, and look at it that way. You know, if you're always looking at it like, well, this would be fun to have, or this would be fun to do, versus I gotta have this, it makes me look like this, it makes me feel like this, then we would have more joy in the moment of just being happy as we are. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, The Shack.
No.
It's a very interesting movie, and if you have, I think it's on Netflix. My friend gave it to me. It was a book, and I'm normally the person that never reads like fiction books. I'm all about like nonfiction, you know, whatever. And it's a story about a man who fell into what he calls the great sadness when something happened to his daughter. His daughter was like brutally murdered and killed and all this thing. And so he kind of lost his joy, and he gets an invitation by God to come back to himself. And I feel like that's what he's always doing, is calling us back to himself. Like, remember who you were from the beginning. Before all this crazy stuff started happening, this is who you were. And this is how simplistic it was. And this is how simplistic it's going to be again at some point, someday, whenever, if you believe.
I think we're getting there. And like you used the word The Shift, which made me smile because that's the name of my new book. And
oh, nice.
It's poetry. Yeah, it's poetry about the shift. So it's pairs of poems. And the left side of every page is the old way of being. And the new right side is the new way of being. And I think the pandemic really opened this door to us pausing and feeling the power in taking a pause and being deliberate about what actually we need in order to live a fulfilled life. And one thing I'm realizing personally is that I've spent 40 years accumulating possession, right? Possession has been my like safe place.
Right.
I still have like all the books from when I was a kid in my garage. I have everything. Wow. I haven't let go of a thing. And there was so much security and nostalgia and identity wrapped up in possession.
Right.
And now I'm craving the freedom and liberation of surrendering to like being comfortable with less and realizing that what I actually need isn't to be surrounded by stuff. It's just to be alive in the moment with the people I care about, doing work that is aligned with my soul's purpose.
Right.
And even though there is a lot of familiarity in all the possessions I've accumulated, maybe they're actually suffocating me a little bit, and I need to just let it all go. And that's new. I did not feel that way a few years ago. And I'm kind of embracing this shift towards not needing so much.
Right.
And that's been a really big shift for me personally.
Were you an only child?
I was for 7 glorious years. And then my brothers were born. I'm still recovering from that.
Yeah.
No, I'm not an only child. But I definitely felt like one during my, early childhood for a long time.
Yeah. So how was it once the brothers came, and how did you adjust to that?
It's interesting because I feel like I'm reliving my own history right now, because I have twin daughters, and then I have my son who's almost 5 years younger. And so they also were, in a way, only children for a long time. And my daughter Violet, who is like my clone, really struggled at first when my son was born, the same way I struggled when my brother was born. You go from being the center of the universe to suddenly being the second-class citizen and realizing like the world doesn't revolve around you.
Right.
But it has been 4 years, and just like my journey, Violet is now the one that is actually closer to my son. And I am actually incredibly close with my younger brothers. And we have this bond that is so special and dear. It just took a little time to have the threat dissipate for us to get there.
I think everybody has that, and somewhat, because same, I was 5 when my brother came along, and then I had adjusted to it by the time the other one came. So, but I was like,
I have another one who's 5 years younger too, so that one didn't hurt quite as much.
My dad still declares that I tried to push my brother down the stairs or something. I'm just like, okay. I didn't like that.
Horrible things that I will not repeat on this podcast.
No, and the funny thing is, I wasn't even like standing doing anything. I was holding him, but I was like playing with him around the steps. So I don't know if it was maybe a subconscious thing, but it was definitely not a conscious thing. Like, let me toss him down the stairs and see what happens. No, that was not. But my dad has it in his mind to this day. He still brings that up. You tried to kill your brother. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? Stop being so dramatic. It was not that serious. Yeah. I didn't like him that much. Okay. I'm not, we're not doing that. So, but I think that's something that we all have to adjust to is, maybe it's sort of cyclical, right? Like you're the center of the universe if you're the oldest child, and then you're not. And then you go through dealing with, when you get in teenage years and having to deal with being popular, not popular, like all these things, and then going out of that into the world, into adulthood, and then trying to figure that out because it's different from, the popular and the clique, but it's still sort of a version of that. And then it's sort of like coming back to yourself and making yourself the center of the universe again, but you choosing it because now you've learned all the lessons and the hard knocks of like all of the little decades of your life that you had to kind of go through to figure out, this is who I was all along. I just didn't know.
That's like 90% of my work, 90%. is about revealing this truth that we were always ourselves the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I always talk about how, and this is my justification, right, is that we're all unique souls. There is no other Melody on the planet, past, present, future. I'm the only one.
Right.
You're the only Karen. And
exactly.
I have to believe God did that intentionally. We could have had clones. Like, why not?
But well, they keep trying to mess around and do that.
I mean, God help us when that comes. But at least for now, we are unique. I believe that is intentional. And I think it's because we all have divine purpose on this planet. And the only thing you have to do to claim your purpose is be yourself. Mm-hmm. That's it. Because it is in your inherent self that your purpose reveals itself, not in the person your ego tells you should be or society tells you. It certainly wasn't, in the law degree I killed myself to get.
Right.
It was in the poetry I was writing when I was 4 years old. Like I have always been this person. It just took me some time to get comfortable with the idea that it truly is that simple to be happy. You have to be in alignment. You have to create alignment between who you are and how you live. And, when I turned 40 last month, my mom looked at me and she goes, 40 is the best until you get to 50, because then at 50, you really won't care about anything. And then it'll be even better. And, we had a good giggle, but I understand what she means because my mom and I are really close in age, so I've been able to grow up with her and alongside her. And what I have seen is exactly that. The older she gets, the more she lets go of, and the more she just simply is who she is. And who she is extraordinary. And she has spent her life, I think, trying to prove something that now she has realized doesn't need to prove.
Yeah, I think as we all eventually will have or will learn at some point. So, I think that's a lot of it is. And two, I mean, I don't know exactly what you believe, but for me, I've never been a religious person because I feel like religion is all about do and don't do and the law. And, whereas for me, it's a relationship with God. That's all he ever wanted with us was to be in relationship. And so part of that movie, The Shack, is you really finding out how special you are to God. Like he thinks about you all the time. He's thought about you since before you were even born, And I think that that's what a lot of people don't realize or haven't realized is that you are loved, you know what I mean? Like in an extraordinary way, like that you never even could imagine. And if we kind of realize that, and then you apply that with your own self and your own love, because sometimes the world tells us, oh, it's vain to love yourself, and it's this. Oh, there's a difference between conceit and just knowing that, you know, you are loved and that it's okay for you to love yourself, you know, not like you're the best thing to slice cheese per se, and like nobody else matters, but did you matter to you? And then
isn't it amazing that we live
by
in
default,
a culture that
you matter to those people around you.
I just think it's amazing.
It's weird. It's sort of a
we live in a
backwards
culture
weird
where-
thing.
Yeah, like you should matter to yourself, and there shouldn't be guilt in that. But
Yeah.
what we're talking about is that deep belonging to yourself, not the like
Right.
superficial selfie, like I look good today.
Yeah. I think the selfies, I don't know where it's interesting when that whole phenomenon started happening. It was just like, okay. I mean, it's cute to like take a picture. Oh, I like myself. I like the way I look today. That's fine, you know. But it's when it becomes anything obsessive, when it's just too much, is just when the issues start to happen.
Yeah, totally.
So, and things like that, it's just like, yeah, that's a lot. You're doing a lot. But okay, if you like it, I love it. Whatever, you know what I mean? And learning not to judge one another, because we don't know everybody's journey. And even if somebody tells you, you don't necessarily know because you didn't live it with them. You know, even if you were around them for some part of it, you didn't walk with them in it, in that sense. Only God really walks with us in anything, you know, so he knows. So, I mean, what would you tell? Oops, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say
Get a
that
little
oftentimes if we're triggered by someone else's attention towards themselves, it's because we're not giving ourselves enough attention.
That's a good point. Yeah,
you know,
we're bothered by it for whatever reason.
yeah.
Because why would you care if somebody was doing whatever? You know, if it's on social media, you're free to turn to another station. You don't have to watch if it bothers you that much. But, you know, I think there's a lot of times when people haven't given themselves permission to do, have, whatever. And so when they see somebody else, it triggers that thing, but they don't necessarily know that means it's there to give you that permission. It's there to say it's okay for you to be you too. You know, it's not like you gotta attack them for being whatever. You know, it's literally like, hey, you know, this is the freedom that you can have for yourself as well.
You know, when I was younger, I used to feel really guilty anytime I felt envy or jealousy. I would like hate myself. Like, why do you feel that way? That's such a bad emotion.
Right.
And now that I'm older, I think of it as a ping, something to make me curious. So if I see that I'm envious of someone, instead of making it a big deal, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I must really want that.
Right.
And, okay, great. What an opportunity to learn about what my needs are. That it's triggering a little bit of envy. And then it nips it in the bud, because I can start creating for myself whatever it is I saw that I realized I wanted. And the envy goes away. It simply plays a role in my self-discovery as opposed to making it about the other person.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a book I read called Desire, and there was one thing he talked about in there was that whenever we see something else and it sparks something in us, whether it's interest or envy or whatever it is, sometimes it's there, like you said, it's like a ping to say, oh, well, and then to explore it, because it's not necessarily like, oh, say if you're a single woman and you see someone that's in a relationship that they're really close or whatever it is, that intimacy, and you really want that, then it's not like you want that man, you want that intimacy, right? Like that's what it's meant to do. But sometimes people misinterpret it as, oh, I want that. But you don't even know what that is. Like, you don't know.
They think I don't want them to have that. Like, that's when it starts getting dangerous, is when you have ill will towards someone who has something you might have, instead of having like love and joy for them and realizing they have that. And now I know I would like to have that too.
Right. And I can have that. That's available to me too, you know, but I had to have the awareness that I even wanted it for it to even be able to come to me, because sometimes we bury things, you know, or we're not aware of what we've been saying, oh, I don't want that. I can't have that. You know, whatever it is. And we haven't given ourselves permission to do that. So.
I think also when we're in a period of like survival and like fight or flight, and
true.
Sometimes you get really numb to desire because you're just operating on this, just enough level of life.
Right.
And we all need desire and intention and hope in order to be our fully realized selves. Like, we are not here simply to survive.
No, we already did that.
Yeah.
If you're here, you already did that.
Yeah. And
you already survived. It's time to live.
Exactly. It's time to live, and to live beyond what we think is possible. And that requires allocating some time to dream, to wonder, to explore.
Right.
And I don't know how many of us are doing that. Like, how many of us are allocating time each day to just simply dream about what we want for ourselves, or to feel desire at all.
Right.
And that's really what I'm working on. Is I shifted my whole career over the past 2 years from running like a e-commerce jewelry business and a resume writing business. I had 2 businesses I was running at the same time, to now being a full-time author. And it all started in January of 2021. I did a clarity exercise where I did a visualization that it was like a guided visualization that was supposed to lead me to my true desire. And
nice.
I've never done things like this, and I was a little skeptical. But when I did this meditation, I saw myself on stage at like a book launch. And I was like, okay, like that's where I want to be.
That's cool.
And what's really exciting is this fall, I'm having a book launch at Barnes and Noble, at like one of the biggest bookstores in Los Angeles. And
nice.
That vision is happening, but it only happened because I made space to honor it and to figure out what it is I want, instead of just trying to grab onto everything around me in order to feel safe.
Right. Because I think in fear, when we're in fear, or like you said, scarcity or survival mode, there's just no room for dream or desire necessarily. It sounds foolish, and then probably somebody around us would have told us that. Well, you don't have time to think about that right now. You're just trying to figure out how to live. We're in the middle of a pandemic, whatever. Yeah. But I think the pandemic really taught people how to slow down and revisit what was important, which is family, friends, ourselves, health, hello, all these things. Taking a minute to go outside and look at the sky and the flowers and, breathe. Like, that became hard for some people, just to breathe, right? So it's been an interesting thing, and nothing happens by accident. It's all an interesting design, but it's not to design like we're puppets and to control us. It's really to give us more freedom, honestly, and to live bigger than we would have imagined. So, yeah. So how do you think your experiences in school, like, I know you said you went to law school, and even before that, when you were a teenager, and how did all those things shape you being an adult or getting to your adulthood?
I'm really fortunate. I went to some extraordinary schools, and I still feel like some of the things that I learned in high school, for example, stay with me today. And so I think having this great foundation that opened my mind, not only to what exists in the world, but also what exists within me, has been like a real catalyst for all the growth and learning I've accomplished as an adult, because I realized very early on that whatever I think my limits are, I'm actually capable of so much more. And that was really the
Yeah.
core thing that my education gave me, was this understanding that I am capable, I am limitless. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
no end to how much I can learn and how much I'm able to apply myself.
Right.
And I guess I learned that I can always count on myself. That's what my
Mm.
education really taught me, is, Melody, at the end of the day, you can count on yourself. If there's an exam, you're going to study for it. You're going to get through it. If there's, you know, a job you need to get, you're going to find a way. And it may
Right.
not be a direct line, because if there's anything I've learned in adulthood, is that life is hardly as linear as our education system would suggest.
No.
But I am capable of weathering the journey and growing along the way. And more than that, like making a positive impact on the world around me as I engage in that self-discovery and learning.
Right. Did you have any mentors that you looked up to when you were coming up? And then did you get to meet any of them?
That's a great question. I mean, in terms of when I was really young, my mentors were very much my family and also my piano teacher. I started, her name is Sheila Heckmat. I started piano lessons with her when I was 7 years old. And what was so special about her is she saw from that early age that I was interested in composition. And so she made it possible for me to write my own music at 7. When I was 13, she helped me record a song in a recording studio. I mean, like, she truly, right? Like, at such a young age, made me feel like my voice was worthy of my own attention.
Love that.
And so she was an absolute mentor growing up. And, you know, in recent years, especially since I started exploring the idea of self-love, I've really enjoyed watching Tracy Ellis Ross. And when I, you know, first started Fred and Far and the Self-Love Pinky Ring in 2016, I had this bucket list in my mind of like, if I could have anyone wearing my ring, who would it be? And she was at the top of my list, because I mean, like, I was following her from like Girlfriends every single episode. And I just loved her character in that, because I identified with this Joan character who didn't necessarily have the traditional path. And she was a lawyer and she was really smart and she had great style.
Right.
So I kind of fell in love with her and her character. And, you know, in 2019, I did get a ring to her, and she's been so supportive ever since. That was kind of like a pitch me moment. And I also have had like little run-ins, not directly yet, but I'm still manifesting with Oprah, because I feel like she was one of the first people who made me feel like it's okay to talk about these alternative things like self-worth and purpose and joy, and connect on a really human level around those things, and not make it something that was very academic or out of reach. And so really, I think we're really fortunate to live in a time where our mentors aren't that far away from us. We get to experience them, you know, through social media or other content, like on a regular basis. And whoever speaks your language, you can reach them. And I'm really lucky that now that I'm a poet and I have my books out in the world, people find my books and then they DM me on Instagram and we get to have a conversation about it.
Yay.
And that is so beautiful, that I could write something and then someone will want to tattoo it. Like this happened last month. A woman got my poem tattooed on her leg. And we got to chat about it, right? And I got to be part of her journey through that. So I think it's really beautiful that we have access to the people who inspire us in a way that's truly unprecedented.
That is so true. That's the best thing about social media. I mean, there's so many interesting things about it, but that's definitely, we're not in the 6 degrees of separation anymore. We're almost at the 1 degree, because you can actually, a lot of them do, you know, handle their own social media. So you can reach out and you might get a response back. You know, it's kind of interesting. I really enjoy that. And Yeah, and Oprah's long time been one of my favorites. She just, the way she tells her story and the at the intervals of different parts of my life. I haven't met her, but I did attend an event she did in Baltimore when she was first starting her on tour kind of thing. And I was 7 rows back from her, so it was just like, wow, it was so close. But haven't met her yet, but definitely somebody randomly, the weirdest thing, in 2009 called me, and I don't know this woman, but we're connected on like some social media platform. And she said, you know what? I hope you don't think this is weird, but literally God told me to call you and tell you that he saw you on stage speaking with Oprah. And I was like, really?
Wow.
And so then when after her show stopped at 25, I was like, well, maybe not. And so then every time I think about it, somehow this woman messages me and says, I still see you speaking in front of millions of people or inspiring people or something. She has some every time. I saw probably now because I just said it, she'll reach out to me today because that's literally, I hadn't thought about it in a while. It was really interesting. So, and she does do her Super Soul Sundays and maybe that, I don't know. But yeah, and one of her Super 100 teachers, Jordana Biernat, was my first interview because I actually read her book, Know the Truth. And I read it and I reached out to her on social media and we were following each other on Twitter and I gave her a great book review on Amazon. And then she started doing coaching. So during the pandemic, when, it was just, life was crazy, she was one of the coaches that I had, and she helped me through a lot of things that were happening in my life with the kids, and there was a lot going on. And so it was really cool to, have a great conscious conversation with her like we're having. And she's a great person too. So yeah, it's just interesting how it all comes together, right? At some level, we don't see it, we're always busy trying to make our little plans, and God's like, child, please, I already have that worked out. You don't even have to do anything. It's just going to show up when it's time. You know what I mean?
Our only job is to remove the barriers. And barriers can be shame, it can be guilt, it can be fear, it can be the memory of trauma that we carry into our present. Those are all the barriers that stand in the way of us living authentically and with intention. And that's our job. Like, you don't need to fight to be who you are. You just have to remove barriers so that it comes with ease. And that's one word I really keep welcoming into my life this year. Like, I always make a vision board at the beginning of every year. And I knew I was turning 40 this year. And on my vision board, it's all about, a drop of calm, ease, just being. And it's it hasn't been the easiest year. There's been a lot of change in my household, and I've had to be really adaptable. And but in all of that, there's still ease underlying it because I am so fiercely committed to being present, like we talked about at the beginning.
Right.
I have enough energy to cope with whatever happens to me today. Whereas before, I think, before I started practicing self-love, there was so much energy being spent worrying either about the past or about the future.
Right.
And I didn't leave a lot of energy to be in the present. Whereas now I'm really, really actively trying to just make my home where I am. And that home in my mind, in my body, in my spirit is here with you in this moment.
You're right. Well, like I don't remember where I heard it, but yesterday ended last night.
Yeah.
So leave it, whatever it was. And even in the Bible again, right? We talked about how when the children of Israel were in the out in the wilderness, how he gave them manna every day. And it was just enough for that day. And then it would, like, you couldn't eat it the next day. And he gave a fresh bin the next. So it's just like God's mercies, God's grace is new every morning. And we just take that and learn to leave the parts that don't, leave the parts that aren't so great to him, and he's really good about he's smoothing those round edges out, if we allow him to.
Like, using your mana, example, it's also about enjoying the gifts we are given today. I feel like so much of my life, the mentality I had was to save the best for later. So,
Mm-hmm.
on my
Like the
birthday,
China.
someone would give me a gift card. I wouldn't spend it. I would save it for later. Someone would give me a
Mm,
bottle of champagne. I wouldn't open it. I would save it for later. As though
yeah.
later was the special occasion and life today wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
And in
That's a
reworking my
good point.
relationship with the present, I save the best for nothing. Like today is the best. And,
Right.
whatever you believe, whether it's God or the universe, or even if you believe nothing and you're just
Right.
alive in this moment, if being alive in this moment isn't enough, then what is?
Right.
Like, what reason do we have to celebrate beyond this?
Right.
So,
Being here right now.
mhm. So
Yeah.
I'm really working on, eliminating this, save the best for later mentality and enjoy what
Yeah.
I can here and now. Um,
That's true. Yeah. So what's the best thing about being a mom, and what's your biggest challenge with your kids?
Great questions. I think the best thing is seeing the world through their eyes. I get a fresh
Mm,
perspective that's undiluted
so
by
true.
life
Mm-hmm.
and the way they see the world and the integrity they have and their willingness to share about it authentically.
Mm-hmm.
Half my poetry, I swear, is inspired by something that they say, and they don't even realize that what they're saying is profound.
Right.
And they also really ground me. When my son was maybe like a year old and he was just learning how to speak, one of the first phrases he learned to say was "wake up." And he would say that if we were ever on our phones, he would swat the phone away and he would say, "wake up."
Oh my
And
gosh.
that is a gift that I don't know any other way you could get than like your
Yeah.
child reminding you to wake up, like
Right.
live with me, play with me, be with me. Like, what are you going to find on the internet that's better than me right now? And so really
Exactly.
they teach me, they heal me. And then to your other point, they really challenge me, especially my daughters. They're twins, they're almost 10. And that pre-puberty transition is happening.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge I'm having right now is for 10 years, I've had them as children. I've had
Right.
them as these grateful, joyful, curious, awe-inspired little beings. And now I see the claws of like adolescence kind of
Mm.
getting into them. And
Yeah.
they're a little angrier. They're a little more disappointed. They're, and
Yeah.
they're losing a little bit of that tenderness
Mm.
that they had. And so I think right now I'm trying to figure out, how do I give them the tools that no one gave me?
Right.
Because no one taught me how to monitor my thoughts or how to express my feelings or how to take care of my body when I
Right.
was 10 years old. Like there
No.
was none of that. Like,
No.
no. But at the same time, I also don't want every day to feel like a therapy
It's
session
off.
for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want them to have to work so hard. So that's really been the challenge, is how do I give them the tools they need in order to make adolescence a little less damaging so that they don't need to spend their 20s and 30s unraveling to get back to who they were.
Yeah, that's true. But buckle up, Buttercup. You ain't saying nothing yet. Yeah, mine are 28, 26, and 21. Whew, Lord Jesus. And I can tell you're not one of those parents, like I wasn't, but I've heard people say like, "Oh, your kids are like whatever, 20, whatever it is. You're almost done." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, you're not done until they're dead or you're dead."
It's not done. No, you are right. It's never done.
Not happening. I mean, they just need you in a different way, And it's interesting, as I've come across some issues with my own kids, it's like, maybe I owe my parents an apology about that. And maybe just that, not everything, but that in particular, because it just shows up, sometimes the things that they were trying to get across, maybe they weren't articulate in it or didn't know how to say it or whatever. But yeah, I've seen quite a few things show up, and I'm just like, okay, I kind of get it. I get it now. All right.
Yeah.
But, I'm not going to give them the satisfaction of going back and saying, you're right.
Oh no, I tell them that all the time. I'm just like, mom, because my mom and I, we were really close until I was like 10, and then we had a very hard time during my teens and early 20s.
Yeah.
And I just
and it's even worse now. I mean, honestly, with all the distractions, like you were saying, all the social media, all the stuff.
Phones, like,
yeah.
How am I gonna, like, my girls don't have their own devices yet. They're itching for them. And I just want to be like, no, don't sign up for this like horrible relationship with technology that's going to control your life. Like, stay free as long as possible. But it's inevitable. And I think, just like anything else, our role as parents is to just give them tools and support them as they navigate through life. Like, I can't control them as much as I'd like to.
No. That's an illusion that we all seem to have.
Control in general is an illusion. I thrive when I surrender. I don't do well when I control, even though for so many years I thought that, like, I just gotta hold everything in my hands and everything's gonna be okay. And all that did was just make me feel terribly unsafe all the time because I had so much to lose. And now I coach myself, like, if this happens, you'll be fine. If that happens, you'll be fine. And getting comfortable with the uncertainty and getting comfortable with discomfort. I think it's made me a better person and also a better mom, because there is no perfection in life. And the best thing I can do is model for them. I think that is my role as a mother, is how do I model for them a healthy relationship with myself, with other people, with my work, with my partner, because they absorb everything. And one of my daughters, she's just like eagle-eyed. Nothing gets past her. She hears everything, she sees everything. And like weeks later, she'll be like, oh, remember when you said that to dad? And I'll be like, you were listening? She's like, I hear everything.
Yeah, they do.
So, be mindful. My best. And it's what I told you earlier. I don't end the day thinking I'm Superwoman. I end the day thinking I did my best today and loving myself in that.
Right. Yeah. And like the 4 agreements, your best is going to be different depending on whether you were sick, whether you felt great, whether you had enough sleep, whether you had enough exercise, whatever, all those things. And giving ourselves and each other some grace for that, because I think we're in a society now where everything is instant, microwave. Everybody wants this, that, move quick, drive fast, run people down. It's just a little nuts. And it's like, oof, okay, are you okay today? And being mindful that just, when people behave a certain way, not to take it personal and not to necessarily react, because that's hard. Like somebody honking at me, like literally I'm like, and I'm like, okay, just relax.
I tell my daughters, when I see them being reactive, I ask them, I'm like, do you want to let someone else's worst inspire your worst? Like, are you going to mirror, are you going to become a mirror for other people's bad behavior? Because that's what reactivity is. It's like, oh, they honked at me, so I'm going to scream out the window. If you're not someone who would have screamed out the window to begin with, like, why are you letting someone else's bad choice?
Bad behavior.
That's also what I tell them. It's like, it's not about bad people. It's about bad choices. And we all make bad choices sometimes. And that also means we have the power to make a better choice next time.
Right. And again, the grace there, because, sometimes people, depending on how they grew up, they were treated harshly. So they don't know they treat their own selves harshly as a result of it, and everybody else. And they don't have any room in there to just, okay, I can accept that happened. And, as long as it's not repeated bad behavior all the time, then, give somebody and yourself a little bit of grace. We're all dealing with something. So, I mean, what's the legacy that you want to leave your kids?
Oh, wow. That is a great question. I think the legacy is that we are all able to feel whole within ourselves. And from that place of wholeness, we are able to share our gifts with the world and make the world a better place.
Yeah. Yeah. And being able to get to that sooner than later, maybe, right? Like, I mean, I just turned 50, I don't know, on the 5th. And so it's sort of like this cool thing where it was just like, 50, really? And then like, wow, that's kind of cool though. Like, I don't feel 50. I don't look 50. I don't know what 50 looks like, but yeah, I don't think that I do. And so it's sort of like, well, what do I want to do now with the rest of what time I have left? I mean, my grandfather passed last year when he was, or no, the year before last, he was 95. But I remember when he was 93 or so, something like that. I was like, wow, I'm half his age. So like, what am I going to be doing when I'm that age? If, God willing, I make it that far, what am I going to be doing up till that point? Like what do I want to do that's going to make the world better that I was here? That's kind of what I think about with just in general. And I feel like if we all kind of had that spark that may, bounce around, since we're all connected, no matter what anybody says, we're all connected. And we can affect change with each other.
I've always believed that that's what God is, and that's how God works. It's the energy that connects us. And the sooner we realize that we have it within us, and I have the ability to impact it in you and vice versa, like we are connected. And the holiest thing we can do is show up from a good place and use that goodness to help others do the same. And, alleviate some of the conflict and resistance and pain that comes when you're not in opposition to yourself and in denial of the fact that we're all connected.
Right. So, and then I'm not better than you. You're not better than me. We're the same.
It's honestly, at a purely scientific level, like you learn in school in physics that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. And energy is energy. So if you believe that, and we're all made up of it, then we should just start thinking about what can we do with all this energy that we have, right?
It's true. Yeah. How are we going to do it?
There's a lot of
There is. There is. So with your rings, I mean, I have 4 of them. So what was the catalyst for creating those rings? And what was the response when you started creating them? I'm going to grab mine so I can kind of hold it up here. This one's my favorite one, the white sapphire.
Yeah, the classic.
And it was you meant them as a pinky, but I made mine as to always choose myself. Like I'm married to myself. I'm with myself more than I'm with anybody else, right? So I, sized mine for that. And we had a great conversation about all the ones that I ended up picking. And I love every one of them and I wear them. But yeah, tell us about how did you come about choosing these rings and what's that been like to create these for all these wonderful women?
So, it came to me on a very personal level. It was the beginning of 2015. I had a husband, I had twin toddlers, I had a house, I had a dog, I had everything. And yet I wasn't happy because the thing that had been left behind along the way was me.
Right.
And it was January. It was like new year, new you, blah, blah, blah. And I thought to myself, okay, I don't want a new me. I want the old me. I want to know how do I bring melody into this equation? And, having been recently married, like when I got married, my husband had given me an engagement ring and I was wearing it so proudly as a symbol of my relationship with him.
Right.
I realized, like, what about my relationship with me? Like, doesn't that deserve a symbol to the world and a reminder to myself? And so I had a ring made and I put it on my pinky because I had never worn a ring there before. And I didn't want this just to be another piece of jewelry. I really wanted it to symbolize this commitment I was making to myself with the idea that every single day when I looked at it, it would be my reminder to love myself and choose myself and get to know myself and care for myself. And so that's what I did. And within a month, things started shifting. because every day I was accountable to myself in this really new and beautiful, sparkly way.
Right.
And then I thought to myself, well, I can't be the only person who feels this way.
Right.
And so then I set out to design a ring that really embodied this message of being a divine chosen woman and practicing self-love and self-care. And I chose the trillion, which is like a triangular shaped stone, because it's the same shape as the divine feminine.
Right.
In ancient times, which is the inverted triangle. And I started with the white sapphire because it's a stone that evokes clarity and connection with self.
Nice.
And, you know, when I brought the ring out at first, the first few months, it was only something that really like my friends and family knew about. And then I had the good fortune of having one press piece written in Racked, which is now like a defunct publication. But something clicked. This idea of wearing a ring as a reminder to yourself. And it came with a pledge card where you make a pinky promise to love yourself and you sign your name. And from that one piece of press, within 2 months, were 100 pieces of press all around the world. And we went from having like 1 order a week to 100 orders in a day. And what was really exciting about that is because of all the press, it birthed this conversation around self-love, this self-love pinky ring, this, what is this? What is this women loving themselves, choosing themselves? Right. It was really beautiful because as women joined our movement, one of the things we did from the very beginning was ask them to share their stories. And we collected hundreds of stories that showed that even though no two women have the same journey, that power of the moment where you decide to choose yourself is universal. Like it is just this beautifully powerful moment. And for 5 years, that's what I had like the great privilege of doing, which is witnessing and celebrating women and creating this sisterhood of chosen women who are brave enough to love and choose and care for themselves every day.
Right.
And that was, you know, the name of that movement is Fred and Far. And it was in cultivating this community that once I asked women to choose themselves and they said, yes, I will choose myself. What followed up was, okay, now what does that mean? Because you can want to love yourself and choose yourself. Right. How do you translate that into a daily practice? Right. And that's when I started writing poetry and exploring what I call the ABCs of self-love, which is my guided journal, because it isn't like an obvious thing. And it's not the same for any two people, but I do believe that there are some foundational concepts like boundaries and gratitude and honoring your intuition. Like these are all the ways in which you can commit to the ritual that is self-love. Right. And, you know, what's really interesting is it all started with me wanting to reconnect with my authentic self. And my authentic self is a poet. And so having signed a book deal and having my books out in the world right now, it is like an emblem of what happens when you decide to commit to yourself daily. And the ring was the catalyst of that for me. It was and is the daily reminder of how can I bring my most authentic self into my world on a daily basis. And I'm just grateful to witness how other women have been able to do that. Like even for you, like this podcast is part of your journey of honoring who you are and getting you closer to get that prophecy of being on stage with your mentor. So no two women have the same path, but we're all really united in our commitment to that self-love path, which is really beautiful.
Yeah, I think I don't know when I found you, but I think you had another ring too before that you weren't making anymore. And I was like, dang, I missed that one because it was one that I can't even remember what it looked like now, but I was like, that one was really cool too. It was another design that you had. And I was like, man, but then I was like, well, this is what's here. And I like these two, so I'm going to get one. And I started wearing it again every day on my 50th, from my 50th birthday. Didn't go out today yet, so that's why I didn't have it on. But, yeah, as a recommitment to myself, like I'm going to choose me and stop, trying to control, force, figure out that. Just honor myself every day, go about my day doing what I need to do, and having fun in the middle of the day too. And, we just need that reminder, because sometimes we just get sucked down that hole of like what we don't have and where we're not at yet and what hasn't shown up yet and what or who hasn't shown up yet. Whatever. But I think it's really beautiful that you did that in the midst of being engaged to your husband, because that's a pivotal thing. That's when you think about it, the whole thing about the Disney story of the prince coming and rescuing you and whatever all that nonsense is that we've known since we were kids, of like you become something when you get a husband, or you become valuable or whatever. No, we were already valuable, and we had to see that, even though society and the world has not honored women in that way necessarily, but we're moving back to that. And I think another part of the shift is seeing how pivotal women are to the world. And that's why I think we have been so attacked and abused and this and that, because there's more going on that meets the eye, in my opinion.
And we've also been like pinned against each other, right? Like women are put into these categories of, oh, she's married, she's not married, she's a mother, she's a worker, she's widowed. And what I loved about the Self-Love Pinky Ring and the community we created, it had nothing to do with the labels you wore.
Right.
It had everything to do with you just being you.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people were single who wore it, and then they got married later and still wore it. Some people were married and then would wear it. Some people were divorced or not even interested in a relationship. It was people from all walks of life. And even there were some men who were like, can I make this commitment too?
Yeah.
And this one woman had one made for her husband.
Nice.
And we had to make a much bigger one and just change the design for him to wear it. But she was like, it's important for me that he commit to himself as well.
Yeah.
And that we show up into this relationship. Yes, we're choosing each other, but from a place of having chosen ourselves. And I think men oftentimes don't have such a big problem with choosing themselves. So maybe we need to remind her a little bit less.
You're right.
But I think giving ourselves permission as women, giving ourselves our highest, most abundant love, not the leftover love, not the end of the day, I work myself to the bone, I sacrifice myself love, but that first thing in the morning, my cup is full love. We deserve that love. And my hope is that the ring is a reminder that we deserve that top of the morning, not depleted, the sun is shining love for ourselves.
I love that. When I found it, I was just like, oh, this is it. Because I think I'd been on a journey of that for a while. I mean, I've been in a community in New York. Regina Thomashower, affectionately known as Mama Gina, created the School of the Womanly Arts. And it was all about honoring, all about honoring your femininity and honoring your sisters, and we're goddesses and all those things. And, I found an interesting, so there was a lot of things I was already doing before I got into that space, but then getting in it was a reminder, just sort of like everything, reminding you who you are, reminding you of your greatness, and finding the sisterhood within it, and all these women that were really embracing themselves and embracing each other and all of those things was like, man, it's a long journey from where we start to where we end, but it is about the journey. It's about, all the little great things you see and find and encounter along the way. And I think if we were more in a culture that embraced that versus get to the finish line, this is where you got to go. And then you get there and then it's like, now what?
Now what? That's perfect description of how I felt. Like, I did all the things. I went to school. I got grade A's. I was student body president. I double majored. I studied abroad. I went to law school. I got the job as a litigation attorney at the office on the 20th floor. I had the husband. I had the kids. And then I was like, now what? Like, and one thing that I've really shifted in my perspective of how I view my life is I used to see my life as a line, and it was like a line that needed to go like this. It needed to go forward and up, and it was accomplish, 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 and move forward, forward, forward. And now I think of it as like an orb, where instead of moving forward and up, I go deeper within.
Yeah.
And the closer I get to myself, the more at peace I am, and the more I'm able to do something that actually matters to myself and to my world, and the better I'm able to connect. So I think having imagery helps, which is, again, why the ring helps. Having something tangible is a really important way to keep yourself grounded in your beliefs. My belief is that we're all pretty special and pretty amazing, and all we need to do is kind of commit to caring for ourselves, and from that place, caring for each other.
Yeah, for sure. Because you can't do anything from an empty cup. You got to fill your own. That's why I always tell you, put your mask on the airplane, right? Can't help anybody else if you're gasping for air.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. So tell us, where can everybody find your books? And is the other one you mentioned, is it already out, or is it coming, or what's going on?
So I have 3 books. 2 of them are out. The first one is Self-Love Poetry for Thinkers and Feelers. It's a book of 200 poems about self-love. The second one is the ABCs of Self-Love, which is a guided journal that'll help you discover who you are and how to care for yourself. Both of those are out, and they're available wherever books are sold. So Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your local bookstore can carry it. And then the third one, which I'm super excited about, is The Shift, Poetry for a New Perspective. And that comes out in September. It's currently available for pre-order wherever books are sold. And if you have questions about any of these books or any of the work that I do, I'm very easy to find. Melody Godfred on Instagram, on TikTok, and my personal website too is Melody Godfred. And I love to hear from people. So my hope is that my poetry book will land on your bedside, and you can use it as an oracle that reminds you every day that you are worthy of your own most abundant love each and every day.
I love that. That's so fantastic. Well, it's been a great conversation. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with me and letting me pick your brain.
I hope we can do this again. I loved spending time with you. Questions are so thoughtful.
I just really I'm an innately curious person. So I really love to find out about people and their lives and where they've been and then how they're impacting the world. I just think that's so cool, because you can really learn a lot about a person just having a conversation. I really like that. So, and your rings, you're not making them anymore, right? So I don't want to send people looking for your rings.
No, I'm taking a break. That was also part of me honoring myself. After, I always joke, I was a career counselor for a long time, and people would come to me because they wanted a new job, and they would end their old job and start their new job. And somehow I just keep adding jobs. And I decided earlier this year that I deserve to only have one job at once. And I also deserve to take care of my health because I have Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disease related to the thyroid, which really affects women. Like, thyroid issues affect women disproportionately and increasingly so. And I wanted to create some space to take care of me and to practice what I preach about self-care. That's why I took a break from selling jewelry. And it hasn't been easy. I'll be honest with you. It's been such a big part of my identity and such a beautiful gift I'm able to give to women who are ready to choose themselves. But what I will say is my greatest contribution to the world is authenticity. And for me to be authentic and actually practice what I'm saying, taking this pause has been one of the most healing things I've ever done. So to anyone who's feeling burnt out, I would say, ask yourself, what is most important to you? And then follow it up with, what are you willing to give up to make space for it? And for
Right.
me, what was most important to me was making space for my health. And I've had to give something up that's really precious to me, at least temporarily, in order to make space for it. But I'm thriving as a result. So I hope if there's any parting message I can give, it's that letting go isn't losing and that there is healing and surrender. So if you feel like you need a break, maybe give yourself one.
Yeah. Well, if you don't, your body will give you that. It takes what it needs. So either you do it voluntarily or it'll happen involuntarily.
Yeah.
So better to do it when it's on your terms.
Yes.
For sure. I do believe that. My phone's ringing. But yeah, it's been great. I'm so excited to have had this conversation with you. And yeah, we'll definitely have to do it again. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
We'll chat a little bit after we stop. But yeah, it was just such a great talk.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, everybody. And we'll see you on the next fabulous.
Thank you for joining us today. Please subscribe so you won't miss our next conscious conversation with Kara and her fabulous guests. Follow Kara on social, on Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, Clubhouse, @Kara Allan, and connect with her on her website at karaallan.com. Also, leave a review if you enjoyed the conversation. Thanks again, and see you next time.